Every Sunday at exactly 6 p.m., Robert Miller used to call his daughter. For 20 years, he never missed a single week. Then one Sunday, the phone stayed silent. Robert sat in his recliner, phone resting on his chest, television playing to no one. The room felt larger without the sound of her voice. He told himself she was busy. Life gets loud when you're young. He didn't want to be a burden. Weeks passed, then months. The calls never came back. Robert was 74 years old and living alone in a small Ohio town where nothing ever changed except the seasons. His wife had passed away quietly in her sleep 5 years earlier. Since then, the house had learned how to be empty. Every object still remembered her. The coffee mug with the chipped handle, the blanket folded too neatly, the silence that followed every memory. Robert had been a strong man once, a factory worker, a provider, a man who believed emotions were things you carried quietly so your family didn't have to. So when his daughter stopped calling, he didn't complain. He just waited. Every morning he walked to the mailbox. Every afternoon he sat by the window. Every night he told himself tomorrow would be different. But tomorrow kept arriving alone. One evening, while sorting through old papers, Robert found a birthday card his daughter had written years ago. "No matter what, Dad, I'll always need you." His hands trembled. He wondered when he had stopped being needed, or worse, when he had stopped being remembered. That night, Robert did something he hadn't done in decades. He cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like someone who didn't want to wake the past. And in that moment, he made a decision. If the world was going to forget him, he would leave something behind that couldn't be ignored. Robert didn't sleep that night. The house creaked with the sounds of settling wood, as if it too was tired of holding its breath. He lay staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment he could remember with his daughter, Emily. Her first steps across the living room carpet, the way she used to fall asleep on his chest during late-night movies. The day he dropped her off at college and waved until the car disappeared. He remembered promising himself he wouldn't cry. He always kept promises like that. At dawn, Robert sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a yellow legal pad. He hadn't written a letter in years. Text messages felt too small. Phone calls felt too risky. But writing felt honest. He stared at the blank page for nearly an hour. Finally, he wrote, "I don't know when I stopped being part of your life, but I want you to know I never stopped loving you." The words looked fragile, like they could break if he added more. So he folded the paper and placed it in a drawer instead of sending it. That afternoon, Robert walked into town. The streets were quiet. The kind of quiet that made you feel like time had moved on without asking you first. At the library, he sat at an old wooden computer and searched his daughter's name. Her face appeared on the screen. She looked older, tired, successful, happy in a way that felt distant. There were photos of her with a man Robert didn't recognize, a wedding announcement from 3 years ago. No invitation, no phone call, no explanation. His chest tightened, but he didn't feel anger. He felt replaced. On the walk home, Robert passed the old park where he used to push Emily on the swings. The paint was peeling now, the chains rusted. He sat on a bench and watched a young father lift his daughter onto his shoulders. Robert smiled, then looked away. That evening, the phone rang. He nearly dropped it, reaching for the receiver. "Dad?" It was Emily. Her voice sounded unsure, careful, like she didn't know if she was allowed to be there. "I heard you stopped calling," she said. Robert swallowed. "I didn't want to bother you." There was a pause. "You never bother me," she whispered, but her voice cracked. They talked for only 5 minutes. Small talk, safe talk, weather and work and nothing that mattered. When the call ended, Robert stared at the phone. It wasn't closure, it was an opening. And openings can heal you or hurt you deeper than silence ever could. That night, Robert took the letter out of the drawer. He added one more line. I don't need answers. I just need you to know I'm still here. Emily didn't call again the next day, or the day after. Robert tried not to read meaning into the silence, but silence had always spoken louder to him than words. Still, something had changed. The wall between them had cracked, even if only slightly. On Thursday afternoon, a small envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Robert recognized the handwriting instantly. Emily's. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a single photo. It showed Emily as a little girl, missing 2 teeth, holding a homemade Father's Day card. Robert remembered that day clearly. He had worked a double shift at the factory and still come home early just to see her smile. On the back of the photo, she had written, I found this while cleaning. I think I forgot how much you did for me. Robert sat down slowly. He hadn't known how badly he needed to hear that. That night, Emily called again. This time, she stayed on the line longer. I need to tell you something, she said. Something I should have told you years ago. Robert listened, heart pounding. When Mom got sick, Emily continued, I was angry. Not at you, but at life, and I didn't know how to talk about it. I felt like you were so strong, so quiet, like you didn't need me. Robert closed his eyes. I needed you, she said softly. I just didn't know how to come back once I left. The truth hit him harder than any accusation ever could. They hadn't drifted apart because of anger. They drifted apart because they were both trying to be strong alone. Robert exhaled slowly. I thought giving you space was love, he said. I didn't realize it felt like distance. Emily cried then, not loudly, just enough to let him know she had been holding it in for years. I don't want to lose more time, she said. I don't want my kids to grow up not knowing you. Kids. Robert's breath caught. You have children? Yes, 2, a boy and a girl. Grandchildren, a future he didn't know he still had. That night, Robert went to bed smiling for the first time in years. But beneath the hope, there was fear, because reconnecting meant revisiting old wounds, and healing often hurts before it saves you. Emily came to visit 2 weeks later. Robert stood at the window for nearly an hour before her car finally pulled into the driveway. His heart raced like it used to on his first day at the factory, nervous and unsure, but determined to show up anyway. When she stepped out of the car, Robert barely recognized her at first. She looked older, stronger, tired in ways only adults understand. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the space that years had carved between them. Then, Emily walked forward and hugged him. Robert held her like he was afraid she might disappear again. Inside the house, everything felt fragile. The furniture hadn't moved. The memories were still exactly where they had been left. Emily's eyes lingered on the family photos, the hallway marks where her height had once been measured, the chair where her mother used to sit. I should have come sooner, she said quietly. Robert shook his head. You're here now. They sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Emily had once done homework while Robert drank coffee after night shifts. Time folded in on itself. I need to say something, Emily said, and I don't want you to interrupt. Robert nodded. When Mom died, I blamed you, not because you did anything wrong, but because you didn't fall apart. You stayed calm, quiet, and I thought you didn't care. Robert's chest tightened. I was breaking, he said softly. I just didn't know how to show it. Emily wiped her eyes. I know that now, but back then, I needed to see it. I needed my dad to need me. Robert reached across the table and took her hand. I'm sorry I didn't know how. Silence followed, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was honest. Later that evening, Emily showed him photos of her children. Robert studied their faces like they were miracles he was afraid to blink away. They've asked about you, Emily said. I didn't know what to say. Robert swallowed. You can tell them the truth, that I was here, waiting. That night, after Emily left, Robert stood in the doorway long after her car disappeared. The house felt different now, still quiet, but no longer empty. Emily returned a month later, this time with the children. Robert watched from the porch as they stepped out of the car. Two small figures stood close to Emily, holding her hands like anchors. A boy, maybe 8, with curious eyes. A girl, younger, clinging shyly to her brother's sleeve. Robert's heart pounded. He had faced burning buildings without fear, but this felt heavier. These are my kids, Emily said softly. Your grandkids. Robert knelt down, his knees protesting, his voice gentle. Hi, he said. I'm your grandpa. The boy studied him carefully. Mom says you're quiet but kind. Robert smiled through tears. I try to be. Inside the house, laughter slowly replaced the silence that had lived there for years. The children explored every room, pointing at old photographs, asking questions about their grandmother, about the man Robert used to be. Why don't you have a phone with games? The little girl asked. Robert chuckled. Because I grew up before phones were smart. That night, after the children fell asleep on the couch, Emily sat beside her father. I was afraid you'd be angry, she said. I was lonely, but never angry. She leaned her head on his shoulder, something she hadn't done since she was a teenager. For the first time since his wife died, Robert felt the house breathe again. The morning after the children left, the house felt quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet. It carried echoes now, laughter in the hallway, footsteps that had finally returned. Robert moved slowly through the kitchen, washing cups that still smelled faintly of hot chocolate. His hands trembled, not from age, but from emotion he had held back too long. As he opened the drawer for a towel, the folded letter slid out. The letter. Emily noticed it before he could hide it. What's that? She asked gently. Robert hesitated. Then he handed it to her. She read it silently. Halfway through, her eyes filled with tears. You wrote this before I called you? She whispered. Yes, Robert said. I didn't think you'd ever read it. Emily pressed the paper to her chest. I didn't know you were hurting this much. Robert sat down heavily. I didn't want to make my pain your burden. Emily shook her head. Dad, pain shared is pain lighter. That afternoon, Robert felt dizzy, just for a moment, enough to scare Emily. At the hospital, the doctor spoke calmly, carefully. Heart strain, he said. Not a heart attack, but a warning. Emily gripped her father's hand tighter than she ever had before. In that sterile white room, Robert realized something terrifying. He almost ran out of time. Not with life, with love. And that night, alone in his bed, he wondered if reconnecting so late would cost him the very thing he was trying to save. After the hospital visit, everything changed. Emily stayed longer than planned. She cooked meals the way her mother used to. She reminded Robert to take his medicine. She watched him carefully, as if afraid he might disappear the moment she looked away. Robert noticed. You don't have to hover, he said gently. "I lost Mom," Emily replied. "I don't want to lose you too." Those words settled deep in Robert's chest. For years, he had believed his absence didn't matter. Now he understood how wrong he had been. One evening, Robert sat on the porch watching the sunset, his grandchildren playing in the yard. The boy, Ethan, ran up to him holding a baseball glove. "Can you teach me?" he asked. Robert smiled. "I'm a little rusty." "That's okay," Ethan said. "I can wait." Those words, "I can wait," hit Robert harder than the doctor's warning, because he wasn't sure how much time he had left. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe again, and made a silent promise. He would stop waiting. The next morning, he asked Emily to sit with him. "If something happens to me," he said carefully, "I don't want unfinished words between us." Emily's eyes filled instantly. "Don't talk like that." "I need to," he replied. "I need you to know I was proud of you, even when I was silent. I loved you even when I was distant." Emily broke down, resting her head on his shoulder. "I know now," she whispered. "I just wish we had known sooner." So did Robert. But regret didn't own him anymore. Time did, and he wasn't going to waste another second of it. A week later, Robert receives a call from the local fire station, the very place he had once spent decades serving his community. There had been a small kitchen fire at a neighbor's house. The new recruits had contained it, but the neighbor was shaken. They asked if Robert could come by and offer guidance, even just moral support. He hesitated. His body ached more easily now. His heart had reminded him of its fragility. And yet, he said yes. When he arrived, he saw the fear in the neighbor's eyes. He saw the uncertainty in the young recruits. And he saw himself, the man he used to be, reflected in the past and present at the same time. Robert spent the afternoon quietly helping, giving advice, showing that even with age, experience mattered, that courage wasn't a thing you lose because your body grows older. But as he returned home, he realized the fire he had fought in his past, the physical fires, had been easier than the fire he was facing now. The fire of time, the fire of relationships that needed to heal, the fire of words that had never been spoken. That evening, Emily and the children came over. Ethan ran into his grandfather's arms, and little Lily wrapped her tiny fingers around his hand. Robert looked at them, really looked, and for the first time, he didn't see just grandchildren. He saw a legacy, a life that would continue even after he was gone. He knew then that his story was no longer about regret or silence. It was about presence, about showing up, about leaving warmth behind in every laugh, every hug, every shared moment. And as the sunset bathed the yard in golden light, Robert whispered to himself, "I am still here, and I will be present for all the moments I can." Days passed, weeks passed, but Robert and Emily didn't let the silence return. They talked, really talked, about the past, about mistakes, about what had gone unsaid for decades, about love and loss, about the years spent apart and the moments they would never get back. One afternoon, Emily suggested a family trip, a short drive to the lake where she had spent summers as a child. Robert hesitated. Traveling felt exhausting, time felt fragile, but he agreed. By the water, Robert watched his grandchildren skip stones. Their laughter bounced across the lake, filling the empty spaces in him he had carried for years. Emily sat beside him. "I never knew how lonely you were," she said softly. "I didn't want you to worry," Robert replied. "I thought I had to protect you by staying strong." Emily shook her head. "You were protecting me and yourself, but now we can protect each other." Robert felt tears sting his eyes. not of sorrow, but of relief. He realized that life doesn't give second chances lightly, and yet, here it was, his second chance, unfolding in the laughter of children, in the forgiveness of a daughter, in the quiet warmth of being together again. That night, Robert wrote in his journal, "I survived loss. I survived silence, but now I will live with presence. I will show love. I will say the words I waited too long to say." Emily found him writing and hugged him. "I've never been prouder of you," she whispered. Robert smiled. "Neither have I, until now." He knew life could still surprise him. He knew challenges would come. But he also knew one truth. Healing is possible. Reconnection is possible. Love, real, unbroken love, is always worth the risk. Robert stood in the doorway of his house one morning, watching the sunlight spill across the yard. Emily and the children were laughing in the garden, chasing a dog that wasn't theirs but felt like it belonged. He breathed it in, the sounds, the warmth, the life that had returned to his home after years of silence and absence. He realized that survival had brought him here, but love had made him stay. Emily came up behind him, resting her hand on his shoulder. "Dad?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "I don't ever want us to lose this," she said softly. Robert smiled, feeling tears he hadn't known he still carried. "Neither do I. Not ever." That afternoon, he sat down with his journal. He wrote about the years he had spent invisible, the pain he had carried silently, the moments he had missed. But he also wrote about hope, forgiveness, and love, about the family who had returned and the life that had begun anew. He titled the entry simply, "Still Here." Because he was. Still here. Still present. Still loved. And he knew, finally, that it wasn't too late for anything. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope. Like the video to spread the message. Subscribe for more real, emotional stories that heal and inspire. Because no matter your age, no matter your past, no matter how silent your heart has been, you are still here. And that is everything.